Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Nikki Westcombe. We are the founders of Nexus Performance. Joining us on this wild ride is our heavyweight coaching team, ready to unleash their expertise to solve any problems in your journey to getting strong and jacked.
Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way.
So pump up the volume and let's get into this.
Welcome back to Nexus Unloaded for this week. Today, we are talking about sticking points in a lift and a little bit of nuance around that. Something that we've covered or at least kind of brushed over a bunch of times. But
Definitely
we're taking
dabbled in it a little bit.
I mean, if you're dabbling in powerlifting, you're dabbling in sticking points because if you're going to do 1RMs, there's going to be a sticking point. So sorry to tell you, if you want to
no, I should have no sticking
just delete
point
all your sticking points, then all you just as smooth as, all your lifts are smooth as, then you're probably in the wrong spot.
Not trying hard enough.
End of podcast right there.
That's it. Done. Thank you very much. Check back in next week with something better.
But before we get to that, I thought that we've both just started a new block of training. Mine's relatively similar, so I probably don't have as much as you to discuss, but I know that yours has gone from, and I wouldn't say that it wasn't powerlifting before. It was what we very often describe as, off season, which is often like powerlifting, but just not
move better as a person,
not just SBD. And yeah. You're focusing on other qualities, and you're doing a high hypertrophy, moving better, all the stuff that we've been talking about. And if you've been listening to this every week, you've heard a bit about that. With your front squat sagas. But
they're the best they've ever been this week.
Hey, there you go.
And they're gone. SSB now.
I'll message him, tell him bring
back.
No.
No, we had a good discussion about it.
Yeah.
So it's coming on. This is the last week of my cut, so this will be week 15.
Oof.
Currently down
15 non-stop. No weeks off. No nothings.
No, not necessarily. If anything, like my calories have gone up. So when I finished my cut with George, I was on about 3,500. I'm now on 4,300.
Yep.
But I'm still dropping.
Yep.
So, and I haven't, it's not as if I've been doing fucking crazy amounts of cardio or intense stuff. It was just quite literally just a more strict approach rather than me being on 3,500 and then I'll go out all weekend and just eat takeout and sodium and fucking all this other stuff and somehow, I'm not dropping weight.
Then your weekly average is actually much higher.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm down 16 and a half, nearly 17 kilos since my heaviest at comp, which is pretty cool in 15 weeks. I'm quite happy with that. Body's feeling good. Performance is quite good. Everything from a health metric standpoint is probably the best it's ever been.
Yeah. So what have you been tracking? What metrics?
Blood pressure, blood glucose, obviously just blood tests in general.
Yeah. Body weight, clearly.
Body weight, yep. So those kind of metrics, sleep data, just everything.
How many selfies you put up on Instagram? That's usually a good indicator of
how well honestly, the most I've done is I took some screen caps of some of my check-in bids that I have to send through to James, and that's about it. Because I'm not a fan of selfies anymore. Used to be when I was younger, big selfie fan, big selfie fan. But just not as much anymore.
Yeah.
And then, this week the block changed up to, it just looks sick. It looks so much fun.
Yeah.
As you said,
what new movements have come in?
So we've got, it's actually quite a large change up in terms of overall direction of where it's headed. So we had
Why is that? Is there
so the rationale behind it is more or less we've done the restorative phase.
Yeah.
We've taken out the exercises that are super fatiguing, that don't have a really great stimulus ratio, stimulus to fatigue ratio. So things like deadlifts and stuff. I haven't done a deadlift from the floor since November, since my comp.
Yeah.
And we're now just in March, basically. So
as you said in some of the previous, with the front squats, you kind of quote unquote deloaded the body, but not in a way where you haven't been training hard and chasing outcomes, just made the exercises literally less loadable, but still pushed hard.
Yeah, my leg press, PB'd, trap bar RDLs, PB'd. I've basically PB'd every form of row I've done. All the arms, shoulders, chest, etc. are all coming up to PBs on everything.
Yep.
So it's not as if I haven't been pushing hard in other aspects. It's just quite literally been the SBD work has been a little bit decreased. Now we switch back a little bit more of a focus on that. So starting from this week, I've trialed the first thing. So I've got still got front squats for this week, but then I'll go to SSB just because it's more loadability.
Yep,
exactly. So I can just get more. I worked it out yesterday that roughly with the sets I was given, I'd probably be getting around 160 to 170 kilos a set for 6x4.
Sounds about right.
Whereas the other day I was doing 100 kilos with the front squat. So like straight away, 60 kilos times 4, that's 240 kilos extra per set times 6. Like that adds up.
You're just going to have to
quite a bit.
Be relatively slow with that progression, I imagine.
Yes. Yeah. So it's just going to be a slower progression over time just to build it all up and everything like that again. But then I have low bar squats. So my sessions have actually changed to full body days.
Yes.
So like the Sunday, for example.
So it was a body part split before.
It was specific like upper, lower.
Yeah.
So that was the split before. Now it's gone basically full body. So like I had front squats into dumbbell press, into some row stuff on Sunday. And then yesterday I had RDLs, barbell RDLs with a fucking 5x3, which was wild.
Yep.
That sucked. Supposed to do hook grip, but I'm a little bitch and my thumbs couldn't handle it.
What a wuss.
So I had to go to straps. I got to 120 with hook and I was like, that was it. I was like, we're probably going to need to go to straps for these if we want some form of stimulus.
Yeah, for threes, fucking oath. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was good. That was super interesting. Like not something I've done before. Followed by, again, a little bit more upper body accessory stuff. And then tomorrow I've got low bar, a little bit more pressing, and then leg press and things like that for the output. So yeah, over the course of the week, I'm now going to 2 squatting exposures. The low bar is more of like a speed-based day, whereas the SSB/front squat is going to be quite slow. So like the time under tension on this SSBs moving forward is 3, 2, 1, 0. So 3 seconds down, 2 second pause, 1 second up.
Yep.
Whereas for the low bar, it's like basically, I think it's 5x2, about RP6, but like
conjugate boy
move. Yeah, a bit of conjugate. Which is
that's
very
a pretty common approach.
I've never done it before.
Like we would, we've talked about speed days and our approach to it and being more of like a technique day, but a speed day, technique day, like you can kind of like somewhat bridge them together, but kind of bringing in, keeping the stimulus higher through a movement that's going to beat you up a little bit less, the safety bar, and then bringing in the comp movement from a pure like skill perspective and doing it at an intensity that is really light. Like really doable. So it's not going to fuck you up.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like introducing you to the movement almost. And then in the following block, typically you can step that up a little bit more comfortably as opposed to just jumping into hard sets on that.
Yeah. Well, the goal with the SSB is to keep that as the main squat movement. So that's the one like I'm driving fucking hard on, pushing hard.
Yeah.
Then the other day is like move the thing quick. Move it quick, move it efficiently. So I'm excited.
You put bench back, no?
Yeah. So I've got bench. That's on the 4th day. And that's changed the order. Like previously I was doing bench as the 4th exercise.
Yep.
Sets of 8 with 3 second tempo, 2 second pause. So like it was severely constrained.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's the 2nd exercise, but it's only 2nd after I do some cable pressing just to get this upper body warmed up basically.
Yeah, cool.
So,
yeah, again, another way of like prioritizing movement or introducing movement would be that being sequencing. So like putting it further in the workout means you're coming into a fatigue, so you can't do as much.
Yeah,
basically, you're a bit more tired at that point. So kind of like again bringing you into it in a slightly quote unquote safer manner, and then you're moving it up the chain to prioritize it a little bit more. Yeah, allow you to put more fucking juice into it. And then obviously it's going to just get better from that. That's really another, like a couple of good examples there of ways of like introducing new movements into a program.
Yeah, it was quite good because like I'm someone who, again, similar to the conversation we had at the very, very start, it was like, there's a lot of things that he's done I knew I should have done, but I just didn't want to. I was like scared to do it.
Yeah.
So by us taking and putting the bench all the way down, like, straight away my load was limited quite a lot. And I only just got back up over 100 kilos last week. But my technique and confidence within that technique.
And also your shoulders were pretty fucked up as well.
I was pretty beat up. Yeah. And I just feel fucking like the other day, it's just like that, almost that little sweet spot where you just like feel the bar float off the chest.
Yeah.
As you're pressing up. And I was like, this is fucking sick.
Yeah.
This is what I want. Whereas like I'm always too busy focusing on I need more load.
Do you have any? Don't we all in powerlifting?
Yeah.
That's the pitfall of powerlifting right there. My program has changed as well. Unlike you, pretty much keeping the same layout, the same structure, the same sort of somewhat focuses, even though the focuses are quite divided. But I've managed to progress a little bit in my ollie lifts, and going from just things like muscle snatches, and I was doing some like clean pulls, snatch pulls, and stuff like that, which are, I mean, fairly loadable, but it's just kind of getting into the movement and kind of getting used to trying to go fast and when to go fast, and like a technical intro of sorts. And now I've actually got some power cleans from blocks, so that takes away having to kind of like hold position at the start, and more just focusing on just developing instant as much power as fast as you possibly can from the knee by putting it on blocks. Some
on our super safe lifting blocks we've got here.
I've been I've been just blocks are massive, right?
Like they take up a lot of space, and
like
we don't
jerk
use them
boxes
that often.
and that stuff. No, nobody else uses them. You get a couple people like doing things every now and then coming in, but very rare for the amount of real estate it takes up. And so basically I just decided, all right, I'm going to stack up 25 kilo bumpers high enough, and then put our little deficit kind of blocks, blocks on top of those, which are only like a few centimeters, and then get it to the right height so it starts at my knees. But it's obviously when you're putting that weight down fairly heavily, the plates kind of slide out a little bit and it gets a little bit sketch. But
it's safe as. I
mean, I'm not that good at them yet. So if I was power cleaning 200, I'd be a little bit scared, and I'd probably go around the corner to one of the weightlifting gyms. But for now, I'm not that good at them.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see that. At the moment, it's still like I did 90 kilos the other day for a few, but it's just more that like I've been getting a bruised collarbone, like kind of fucking lands on you, and it just hit, and I'm doing them a couple of times a week. So just like I don't know if you're meant to get a bruised collarbone. I should find that out. But
if you're an expert, please let us know.
I imagine not, but maybe it's just like in powerlifting, you build up a callus to these things, right?
Yeah, I went back to hook yesterday, and that fucking sucked.
Yeah, so I'm meant to be doing hook as well, but I don't.
I still just couldn't wrap my head around a hook on a stiff bar because it's a little bit thicker, and I got short, stubby little thumbs.
Yeah.
So like the deadlift bar is perfect. But as soon as I went back to that, like just that little bit wider bar, I was like,
you're just gonna have to start doing the wrist curls, getting those forearms juicy.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to do a lot of things.
Still hitting my Viking presses, my single leg press, my RDLs.
Still sprinting?
Chin ups, some sprinting.
Perfect.
It's all in the sled. But just really the progression in those. So realistically, like for me, it's just those progressions in the ollie lifts. I tried to do some very, very, very light overhead squats, which just was not happening. Like my arms, although my shoulders are way more mobile than when I started, like I can get into a much better like rack position and stuff, I still can't get them to go like behind me, if that makes sense. Like when you're in a snatch, like catch it overhead in a muscle snatch type thing, but then if I go to squat where there's a little bit of forward lean of the body, you need a little bit anyway.
The bar has to go back behind you.
Yeah, but mine doesn't. So mine just goes in front of me, and then it just turns into it's just not happening. I kind of get halfway, and it's just not there. Wants to fall down. So yeah, mine, not huge amount changes for me, but it's different because all the movements that you're doing are movements that you're, I guess, a lot more familiar with, that you can make slightly big chops and changes, but two more still familiar exercises and be fine. Whereas mine are, I'm still sucky at a lot of these things. So you don't need a lot of change when you are still learning. You just need exposure and repeated exposure, just a lot of reps essentially to build these things, which actually leads in well today with the sticking points, because that's actually one of the points that I've got written down here.
Yes.
About sticking points. So the reason this came up a couple of weeks ago on an IG live where I was reviewing the workshop that Anthony and I did together in Ballarat.
Yep.
With that, we were talking, or I was talking about, I was doing the review of it and kind of some of the lessons learned from it. And I saw and how like there was a lot of people there that thought they had issues. Like we go around the room at the start and we go like squat, bench, deadlift. Like, what do you really want to learn? Like, what do you suck at? Essentially, like, what do we want to get out of today? Make sure everybody gets their value and their problem solved while they're walking out the door.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people were like, I I struggle with hitting depth, or I struggle with this or that. And a common theme obviously was like, I struggle with X sticking point in X lift, and realistically, because there was some quite good lifters there. There were some ranked beginners as well, which we've already talked over. But people at different levels with different kind of sticking points or perceived sticking points, and more often than not, those sticking points weren't really a concern.
Yep.
As in, like, they were being caused by a lack of, let's just say, like, technical efficiency, or some sort of like not being in the good start position, not being able to hold that start position off the floor or out of the hole, and then flattening out on the bench press, and that leading to a sticking point becoming a sticking point because they couldn't hold things. Like leverage, things were changing throughout the exercise that led to the sticking point being there that just wouldn't have been there if they were able to hold their technique.
Yes.
So, that leads us to talking into this and just talking about sticking points and trying to define these sticking points a little bit more, what they actually are, what people think they are, and then different solutions for it. Because like I said, with that whole spiel just then, sometimes when you are dealing with sticking points, sometimes it just is what it is.
Yes.
As in, like, sometimes, let's just say if you've got a person with just a perfectly, like, they've been lifting a long time, they've been doing SBD a long time, their technique is, I don't want to say perfect because perfect is really hard, but like, it's dialed in as fuck. Like, they've played around with different positions. They've changed their grips, changed their stances, changed this, changed that, experimented a lot and found like what works for them really well, maybe worked with different coaches and really have it dialed in, and they have sticking points in certain positions. It's most likely like that's going to be their sticking point, and they're just, due to multiple factors, going to have that sticking point for a long time.
Yeah.
The interesting thing I find about this, and that people always want to solve these sticking points, is like if you were to do pick an exercise like a bicep curl, a tricep push down, something super simple. Yep. It's not the same, so I don't want to like completely like put the analogy side by side, but like if you do a bicep
like it's
curl,
a similar principle.
Yeah, so if you set up your bicep curl in different ways, like an incline one or a high one, or different implements, you're going to fail at a certain point because it's going to become hardest at a certain point.
Yes.
And everybody accepts that. Everybody's like, yeah, that's just the hard part of a bicep curl, or of that particular bicep curl. And people also understand that, hey, just getting stronger is probably that's still going to be there, but I'm going to be stronger. Yep. And my sticking point at that old weight isn't going to be there anymore. But when it comes to a big compound lift like a squat, bench, and deadlift, we want to all of a sudden like really overcomplicate it and go like, we should do, pauses in that position. We should do strengthen whatever X muscle that we think contributes to that exact position, even though they're very underselling the body's ability to do stuff there. But yeah, we become a little bit more,
you dive a little bit too deep.
People
become a little bit caught
miss
up
the forest
in the
for the trees a little bit.
I was about to say the exact same thing. They try and focus in on like probably something that doesn't necessarily matter as much as they think it does, instead of just focusing on like. And I was actually having this discussion yesterday with one of the girls in here, and we were just discussing. She squats quite fast, like I'm talking drop, catch, stand kind of thing.
Yeah,
and every
through
time
lack of confidence or sport.
That's just how she. Okay. That's just how she squats.
Yep.
And so she's coached by someone externally, and I was just chatting to her, and I'd watched her squat over the last couple of weeks, and I just offered a little bit of advice on one or two things with some upper back tension. And I still noticed that basically every time she's coming out of the hole, the first thing that happens, and we see it quite a lot, is the glute shoot straight up.
Yeah, hip shoot up.
Hip shoot up, sort of fold a little bit more forward. She's holding it a hell of a lot better now. We changed up the little upper back stuff. Coach is happy. Said a similar thing to me, like, don't change anything now. You're 11 weeks out. Like, don't change anything too drastic. We want to focus on getting through to the comp as best as possible. But I just said to her that I was like, at this point in time, this may not be an issue for you. You can probably muscle through it. You can probably overcome it. Once you're pushing a little bit further, closer to your ceiling of strength, which I know we've spoken about quite a few times, this could become an issue due to the fact of like, it's going to become a point in time when you can't overcome that if every single time you're sort of folding down a little bit.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And just having a bit of a chat about like, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to go away, spend all your time reshaping your squat and fix everything. I was like, you could honestly just take an extra second down to the pocket.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you
I mean,
could
so
feel,
in your eyes, you're diagnosing or looking at that problem and seeing that sticking point or that point of the hardest part of their lift as a consequence of a loss of position, not as
yes.
like that is a weak position, as in
Yeah,
like
no, she's strong as fuck in that position. She's ingrained
if
that
she
position.
stays in that position.
Yeah, like if she goes into that position, she goes into it every single time.
Yeah.
So one would argue that, like, okay, sometimes there's not quote unquote perfect technique, but if somebody spends a hell of a lot of time in that position over and over and over again,
Yeah.
they somehow get pretty strong at it.
You can make inefficient positions work for you for sure, but
Yes.
it's not, that's not the goal of the sport.
No, absolutely not. And that's when you sort of start to look at things like the cylinder strength.
That's where it
and
actually
start
gets
to-
really confusing.
That's where it can become a little bit confusing.
You
But
look on Instagram, you see some person doing a good morning squat,
Yeah.
still way stronger than you, and you're like, oh, see, it
yeah,
works.
but exactly. But for her, for example, it was more of like one of
Yeah.
those things. She was like, "Oh, what do I need to change this? Do I need to change this?" And I was like, "I'll just take an extra second.
Yeah,
That's it.
Yeah.
See how you go. We're just taking an
As
extra,
in more control into
just a little bit more control on the eccentric phase. So instead of that whole like drop catch kind of thing,
Yeah.
just that little bit more tension kept throughout. And she's going to come back in next week and give it a crack because she wrapped her squats up. But if like you see some people sometimes and they go to the point of like, oh no, so you need to do this and this and this and this, and then the lifter gets overwhelmed. Like as I mentioned, she's 11 weeks out. Like if you overwhelm someone 11 weeks out, that their squat is going to fold them and they're not going to stand up. Like they're going to start to freak out. They start to have that mental battle.
Yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act because if you just try and tinker with everything at once, it lead to the situation you're talking about. Whereas if you go like, nah, she'll be sweet, you not do anything about it. Like obviously, it's not very encouraging as a lifter to go like, well, I mean, it's not like I want to get stronger.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So like it, yeah. Anyway, that's a different
picking the battles as to when is appropriate and not.
Yeah, but you're right in that. So that's a good example of it being as a result of a loss of position.
Yes,
and addressing it through a loss of position as opposed to going, you need bigger quads in a good morning squat. That's a common thing. Like you need bigger, stronger quads, and that's going to help you. Your quads stay the dominant thing, and your body not want to shift weight elsewhere, and your center of mass stay right, and blah blah blah, and you'll be able to do a more upright squat, which
getting bigger quads may help.
It'd probably help. Yeah.
Holding a better brace might also help.
Yes.
And
yes.
That's a hell of a lot easier and a quicker fix to do than trying to grow someone's quads.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like we'll get to, it's definitely something that you want to address multiple things, but
yes.
So let's just go and kind of a little bit more down that hole and just go like when somebody comes to us and has a rock solid sticking point, something that's like a common situation would be somebody walks into the gym here, they've just been fucking around in commercial gyms for the last, let's say, 3 years. 2 of those years they made zero progress on their squat, and they've just been not through lack of trying, not through lack of volume or intensity or whatever. They've tried up in their frequency, lowering their frequency, doing more, doing less, and they walk in the gym and they ask you like, here's my squat, it's been stuck at 100 or 200 kilos or whatever it is for 2 years. What can we do about it? Like, where's your head go to in that situation? What questions are you asking?
First thing I want to know is basically the way we look at it is like essentially just trying to break it down, but understanding what they think the issue is. Because when you can come from a place of understanding of that particular individual and their interpretation of what's going wrong,
yep,
it also helps you to understand the way in which you can explain it to them to try and help fix it. Because if you start turning around and someone comes in and they just like, oh, my squat is fucked, I'm stuck in this position every time, this is how I always fail, and straight away you just go, oh, this, and this. And then again, same thing, right? They get like overwhelmed and they're like, oh, fuck, like, am I really that bad? Like, is it really this bad kind of thing? Whereas like understanding what they think is going wrong, whether they have a deep understanding of it or not, at the end of the day, they're the person, they know their body better than you do. Just having a look at it and trying to get a bit of an understanding about how they understand it so then you can explain it to them in a better way.
Yeah.
And just breaking it down into the basics.
Yeah.
Like I know we're big on, our 10-step guides and things like that. And just understanding, okay, well, if we can fix a brace or, my first question for most people who come in here is like, do you know how to brace?
Well, first step from what you're saying, like, is getting on a common ground with what the problem is.
Yes.
So getting, why do you think your squat's been stuck at the weight it's been stuck at for 2 years? And they're going to go, I think it's because of X, Y, Z. And then, there's probably a couple of layers of why into that to kind of get a true understanding. And then you're going to take that and go, I can see what you're saying. And I can see what's happening in your videos. And then maybe you can take that and go, like, I think it's to do with this, you bracing, whatever, setup, stance width, fucking whatever it is. Maybe they are just weak.
Yep.
Maybe it's not a problem at all, but they just, it is a programming issue, even though I kind of outlined the situation that it wasn't. But hey, but you're going to help identify the issue, get them on the same page as you, so there's a mutual understanding of at least what we think the problem is going to be. There can't ever be 100% certainty on it. And then from there, also get an understanding of a plan forward.
Yes.
As in, like, we're going to try to brace a little bit better. We're going to try a slightly wider stance. We're going to put some shoes on. We're going to change this XYZ to try and move it in the direction that we want. Because I think that is going to cause this cascade of changes and allow you to get past that sticking point a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to that in a lift, usually I'm just going to, like, I know that we said before, and I've got a little bit of a quick write up here that I've said, but like, so it's not off the top of my head, but like, if we go into the reasons why somebody could have a sticking point, things like muscle strength curve crossovers, as in, like, the transition point from when your quads are the main mover into the other part of your lift, or off the ground in a deadlift versus the top, off the chest in a bench versus the top, like, slightly different muscle groups that do slightly different jobs, even though there's a lot of overlap, but there's going to be, like, parts where
prime movers
are weaker or stronger.
Yep.
So, like, at end ranges, you're weaker.
Yep.
If you're at the start of a bicep curl, you're weaker. At the end of a bicep curl, you're weaker. In the middle, you're strongest. So that applies to a compound lift as well, but it's much more complicated because you've got multiple muscles,
multi-joints
doing the things. And so it's normal to have sticking points at certain positions, but things like that, joint positions, how somebody's built to at least to some degree, as in, like, segment lengths, femur length versus lower leg length versus torso length, that sort of stuff is going to cause some degree. You can get around it a lot with changes in stance positions and stuff, but and obviously injury histories, like injuries that people have that have maybe led to their body motor patterns being a little bit messed up, mental being a little bit messed up, weaker muscle groups coming into it, like a true imbalance coming in, usually comes from some sort of injury. So all these things can make sticking points happen. But the reason I said that is because the big truth is really, and we said this earlier, that somebody like in that situation that we were just talking about that comes in and said they're stuck, they've only been training a few years, which might seem like a long time, but realistically it's not.
No.
Like, if you have technical things that can be fixed, like big technical deficiencies, like I'm not saying this is, but that person that you were talking about, like just controlling the eccentric a little bit better and being able to hold that eccentric position a little bit better at a particular weight, or staying tight on your bench press, bracing, like some of these big fundamental parts. If you're lacking in those areas, then all those things that we just mentioned, kind of like, I don't really give a fuck about that.
Yeah.
Like, because most people aren't going to get to the point where we start, like, doing the tinkering with those other little things and things like that, or at least at the forefront of our approach to a sticking point. Most people's sticking points come from exactly what you said, a loss of position.
Yeah, bigger things.
Much bigger things that are much more addressable through just, like, learning to lift better.
Yeah, lower hanging fruits.
Yeah.
There's always going to be.
Yeah. So it's, until you get to that point, I would just keep, like, really deep diving into the fundamentals and stop worrying about how long your legs are and stuff, and really worry about the big fundamentals behind the lifts. And of course, if you have a coach that is experienced, once you've got those fundamentals down, you can go down those rabbit holes. But most people, like 95% of people have, as you said, bigger things to worry about.
I can almost confidently say that I've never, in my fucking nearly 6 years of working face to face with clients, looked at a client and gone, oh, well, it's this, your femur length is this, and
I've definitely got,
XYZ. Like you look at it, but you just kind of like, okay, cool, but how do we get that person into a better position? As you said, right, could be stance width. Like if someone does have long femurs, that I'm not going to turn around and go, oh, you got really long femurs. I'm just going to say, all right, let's try widen out that stance width, or let's put something under the heel, or let's try this, or let's try that. Like you just kind of look for the ways in which to improve it without sort of, I find myself anyway,
I tell people that they're probably not going to, like if somebody has really short arms, I'm probably going to like, look, deadlifts probably just aren't going to be a best friend. And this isn't
that's probably the only situation where I have is I'm like, you're built for deadlifting or you're not.
Yeah, or benching or whatever. I usually have this discussion of like, hey, yeah, but it's not that they can't get strong. I know people that aren't quote unquote built for deadlifting. They still deadlift well over 300.
Yeah.
They're just not deadlifting 400, right? So it's yeah, don't let that limit you.
No.
It could become your excuse. But yeah, I'll tell people like, yeah, look, deadlifts are going to be the harder one of the three, I think, for you to work on. That's not to say we won't work at them. The cool trade-off with that is you have a big bench, yay. So like,
positives.
Yeah. So there are people, but it's not. I'm not going to go like, yeah, it's really going to like fuck up this part of the lift or whatever. It's just that lift is probably just not going to respond as well as the others.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's more or less, I guess what I was trying to get at is like, I'm not going to blame that on that. Like it's, okay, let's do XYZ to adjust it or make up for it or mitigate it or whatever. And then we can still fucking push hard to get you strong as fuck in that position.
Yeah.
Get you as strong as in the position that you can get into.
So as we've established, most people need a more technical, fundamental base.
Yes.
And a more, let's just say, general base of attributes, as in generally strong, all your accessories and there's nothing that's like absurd, like just weak. You know what I mean? You've trained for a bunch more years, technical proficiency, all this stuff's relatively up there. And you think you are one of these people that, and let's go along and say that are past these kind of like base levels, and you are in the small percentage that really do need to worry about their sticking points. There are a few options that people use to bring them up. So that is, we already kind of like alluded to this stuff, but getting bigger quads to help stay the prime mover and help you, your body favor them more, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, in a squat. There's that absolutely validity to that. If you have identified through, and I just wouldn't go to a physio and get them to like just kind of like do their little like dyno test and then say fucking your quads are weak, because it's just, I mean, you're going off one little metric and like that is so a small picture of it. But if like there's if it's consistent in your training, like if your numbers on certain lifts are a little bit just not up to par with others, maybe you have stuff like that, maybe a previous injury has led to you, like maybe your knees are fucked or been fucked for a long time, they're fixed now, but that's led to your quads being weaker. I don't know, like there's a few different reasons potentially, but yeah, absolutely, there's validity in bringing that up to some degree. I can see that being one of the solutions that people will take.
Yep.
Other solutions would be like pauses or isometrics. So people will say like
tempo in general, I think, is like, you could probably just basket tempo in general as a really good.
Well, it's hard. I'm talking more like if you're using a 4-second eccentric or a long pause or something like that to develop positional strength and holding position, like we're assuming that somebody's past this. I'm talking about when somebody's going to pause in a position that they're weak, or like spend more, or like block deadlifts or whatever, like deadlift from a position where they're weak.
Yep.
And often we've argued against it because of the aforementioned stuff, as in like usually it's not that. Usually it's a positional thing.
Yes.
But if somebody is weak in that and they've done all the things they can with stance and grip width and all that stuff, that is, I'm not saying it's super valid, but I'm saying that it's one potential kind of tool in the bucket that people will use.
Yeah, I've seen people use things like pin squats and obviously pin benches and stuff too, right? Like similar principle.
That's the stuff
like
I'm talking about. Yeah,
people who are slightly weak off the chest. I think I've done them before, where come down and the safety stop it just above the chest, but you still have to maintain that tension, and then driving off of there,
Yeah, some people will do just from the bottom, as in like
yes,
full,
I've seen that too. The full just concentric phase of
Josh
the
Bryant,
aspect. Yeah,
special, that one. Yeah, I haven't played around with it too much. Like you said, I'm the one that probably programmed you the pin benches.
Yeah.
Like it. See, I don't mind that because it's not really like you're not really losing out on anything. You know, worst case scenario, you fucking it's a bench still.
Yes.
So it's just a variant. But yeah, honestly, I haven't gone down this road. I haven't needed to, even through all the elite people I've coached and all the really strong people I've coached. It's never been something that we've needed to really drill on. But I think if you think you've exhausted all these other routes, maybe I can see some validity to that, but I would do it in conjunction with the hypertrophy, weak muscle groups approach, and also make sure you're doing like a bunch of heavy lifts and things like that just get practice in the full range of motion, actual movement as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, keep searching out ideas from other opinions from other really good coaches out there. Don't think you just know it all, and just kind of chase opinions on your technique as well, because I find that there's those little 1%ers at that level anyway, because we're assuming this person's pretty damn good.
Best of the best by the sound of things.
Yeah, are going to lead to those little breakthroughs. They're not going to transform it, but at that point, you're not worried about like fucking things that just unlock crazy amounts of strength or whatever.
Yeah,
you're looking at 1%ers then.
I don't think there is that. Like we've spoken about this before, more in the realm of education, right? And like for us now, especially for you, at a point of education where like you're never going to a new seminar or workshop or anything like that because you expect it to absolutely change your mind and blow you out of the water and everything. But it's those 1 to 2 little golden nuggets that like really might help you think about something a different way, might phrase something a different way, etc., etc. It's no different to this technique discussion around like sticking points. Like if we're talking quote unquote in this person who's the most elite of elite, and they do have a legitimate sticking point that they've done absolutely everything else for,
caused by a previous injury or something.
Yeah, and it could quite literally, like you could just have an assessment of somebody else looking at your squat and go, oh, have you thought about this or looked at this or whatever the case might be. And it's just something that's just so minorly different, but it's just enough to really push you over that like precipice of where you thought you could be. It's not necessarily, but yeah, as we nailed it, like pretty much 90% of people that we have come and see us.
More, yeah, I would say even
closer to 100, honestly.
I think in a few of the more recent people that have come through into my one-on-one coaching, for the most part, I do get the odd person at a lower level, but I get generally like intermediate people looking to go to that higher level these days. And even then, I can think of the last few people and a couple of the issues they had. And in the first few weeks, we identified just a couple of little things like, hey, I wonder if just taking your grip and stance out on your deadlift, or I wonder if just taking your grip width out on your bench press, or just changing the sequence in which you brace, or something like that, will help. And it's never a certainty because these people are quite good. It's like, I just think that it would just look better. It just doesn't look right, you know? And then you just make that little change and all of a sudden it feels better. It's not with those people. It's never like they just unlock strength. They kind of like it just usually starts off by just like feeling a little bit better and looking a little bit more fluid, I guess, whatever you want to call it. And then you give them, if that's all it is to start with, I'm happy with that. And then it takes a block or two, and all of a sudden, where we're pushing the same, if not more numbers for sets and reps.
Yeah.
So, that's where those people are that come to me. But so usually it is that stuff still. Yeah. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And for me, it's pretty much always that stuff. Like almost always.
Yeah. Yeah.
A few minor tweaks.
Cool. All right. I think the big takeaway here is that sticking points are normal.
Yes.
No matter if you're the most proficient, just, brilliant lifter in the world, there's still going to be a hardest point in the lift. So don't let it get you down. Just understand that it's part of the process. Just like another more isolated lift, there's going to be a hardest point depending on how you set it up and the implement you use and where you put the bar and blah, blah, blah. It's the same shit, just on a bigger, more global scale with lots more shit going on. Always focus on the fundamentals of holding position and or technique.
Yes.
So getting heaps stronger, but still being like inefficient, can lead to really fucking annoying just walls in training, or perceived walls where your lifts just aren't going anywhere. And those little things, that being able to hold a position better, and not worrying about, is this a more powerful position, but is it a position that's just more repeatable and stuff, is going to be better over time. That's powerlifting, because it is a slow strength sport. And if you think that you are efficient and all that, then there are a couple of routes for that stuff. But most people are jumping to conclusions way too quickly and worrying about, my triceps are too weak in my bench press, and just really missing the forest for the trees with this stuff. Learn to zoom out, learn to look at the global picture of what's going on, what's leading to that position, like being hard.
Yep.
Is there more to this story? Typically is get some other opinions on it as well. I still get other people's opinions. You still get people's opinions.
I love when people send me messages and ask questions, and
we all get people's opinions on this stuff. So
great.
You never stop learning with it as well. And you don't just sit in your echo chamber and just hammer away at something when you know when it's not working for you.
Yes.
Cool. All right.
Perfect.
We'll leave it there.
Done.
Thank you for listening to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned in the podcast today, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gyms based in the Gold Coast and Townsville. Make sure you follow us on our Instagram for any updates on what we are currently doing, and we'll see you all in the next episode.